Good afternoon, my name is Andre Collins. I'm a student of Richmond Build. It's a great program. These green jobs, they are the better future because they're healthy and they're right for the people and the environment. And they're green also because they're taking the people who would otherwise be poor and putting green in their pockets. So it's a good lucrative investment.
We see ourselves as entering what we call the third wave of environmentalism. The first wave was the conservation wave. The original conservationists, they were the Native Americans. For 10,000 years, this entire continent was essentially a gigantic nature preserve. In 1492, the continent got put under new management, and the wholesale destruction, leveling of a whole continent, meant that even some of the Europeans said, this is too much. That's where you get Teddy Roosevelt, that's where you get John Muir. That is the first wave of the conservation movement. The second wave was the regulation wave. We got the EPA, the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act, Earth Day, all of these things came out of it. Beautiful moment, but there was no race or class analysis in that second wave initially. And as a result, NIMBYism, not in my backyardism, began to creep into that second wave. And it began to look like, from the point of view of poor people, low-income people, people of color, that the mainstream white polluters and the mainstream white environmentalists were conspiring to put all the poison and all the toxic dumps in our neighborhoods. That's why in the 1980s you saw, inside of that second wave, something called the environmental justice movement. And that was when low-income people and people of color stood up and said, hey, wait, hold on a second. Regulate, yes, but do it with equity, do it with fairness, do it with justice. Our children should not bear the brunt of the asthma, the cancer of an industrial society. Well, now we are going into a third wave, and the lessons from the second wave have to hold up.
Before I even look at the roof,
the third wave is about investing in the solutions of a clean and green future. That is automatically a different politics. It's a politics of hope, of opportunity, of optimism. The only question is, as we move into this new situation, as we move into this new moment in environmentalism, who is going to be included and who is going to be left behind?
If you want to know what's going to be big business in 10 years, one way is to look at where the venture capital money is going right now. And in 2005, green clean tech was the 6th largest category of venture capital investment in the United States. In 2006, that jumped up to number 3. Clean technology includes things like solar panels, renewable energy, biofuels, and alternative transportation. It includes things like green building and energy efficient construction. So these are the technological solutions that must be part of the larger transformation.
The good news is that the green economy is growing. It's growing on a vertical. They call it the LOHAS, Lifestyles of Health and Sustainability part of the economy. That's where your solar power is, your hybrid cars, your organic food, everything that's positive is in that sector, growing on a vertical. Here's the bad news. It's the most racially segregated part of the U.S. economy. It is almost lily white in terms of owners, consumers, investors, even workforce. This is the beginning of eco-apartheid.
A solution that works for one sector is not really a solution. The reason being because the concept of we are all one is not just some spiritual concept, it's actually scientific, it's actually real. And the sustainability movement is not sustainable if it's just for the elite. It can't last. It literally is not sustainable. So we really need to get that there is an underlying system that we have to be courageous enough to heal. In particular around the environmental movement, looking at class and privilege and really being willing to do the hard work around it and getting that that's part of healing the wounds on this planet.
The conventional environmentalist conversation, you can see it as being about gray to green. Gray being the problems that environmental activism is trying to solve, and green being the solutions that we want to invest in. But we often find there's a missing dimension to that conversation. If we think about rich to poor, in addition to gray to green, there are new and different ways of talking about the environment than typically occur. For example, if we talk about the climate crisis, the typical environmental conversation sounds like polar bears drowning at the poles. Their habitat is melting. This is a serious problem, but if you go to low-income neighborhoods and talk to residents there about people drowning instead of polar bears drowning, if you talk about Hurricane Katrina, or if you talk about asthma epidemics and cancer clusters, you almost don't have to finish your sentences. People get it right away. The environment is relevant to everyone. It's just that there are different ways of talking about it to engage folks in the conversation.
The only goal that makes sense is restoration. And you cannot restore the places on earth unless you go to the people and restore them. The disaggregation of social injustice or social justice and the environment has really, I think, hurt the environmental movement in this country and prevented it from being a movement that has a clear mandate from the top down and from the bottom up. It's not just about the forest, it's not just about the water, it's not just about climate change, it's just that it's not just. All those things are injustices. And I remember once being in a classroom and I was talking about the fact that there's 1 billion people on Earth right now who want to work, who cannot work. And a third grader raised her hand and said, "Is all the work done?"
The growth of the green economy provides us with a very unique opportunity. We can provide people with low levels of skill access to jobs that provide them with decent wages, health benefits, opportunities for occupational mobility and pathways to education, and at the same time to be engaged in work that has meaning and that benefits the community. Green-collar jobs are really ideally suited for people with low levels of skill for two reasons. One, because there are lots of entry-level manual labor jobs that they can do, and that means that people who don't have college educations or people who have not been working for a long time can in fact learn some of these entry-level skills and over time increase their levels of skill on the job.
Not only can we fix gasoline cars and diesel cars, we can fix alternative fuel cars, so that gives us a step ahead of all the other technicians out in the world.
Secondly, they're incredibly ideally suited because almost all of these jobs provide people with on-the-job training. Talking to employers all over the Bay Area, I learned that with only 2 exceptions, every single sector of green-collar work, from alternative energy to weatherization, from A to Z, offers workers the opportunity to be trained on the job.
And green-collar jobs are great because they can't be outsourced. You can't pick up a building, send it to India, have it weatherized and put solar panels on it, bring it back. It's got to be done right here in the United States. And that's how you begin to get more buy-in from the U.S. public that greening the country is a good way to go.
The green economy is growing. It's just starting to emerge as a vibrant arena. And we can imagine that if we can motivate somebody and incent somebody and provide somebody who's been locked out of the labor market and not very skilled at entering the labor market with an opportunity that's not just going to be available this year, but also going to be available for 10 years and 20 years. That's an incredibly exciting opportunity.
Volts times amps equals watts. Okay, that's it. Times amps.
So we see 3 possible futures. The first being eco-apocalypse. We just stay stuck on stupid, killing everything and selling it for profit and stuffing it into incinerators and calling that economic growth. It's a suicidal economy. But there is a second dangerous future, and it's what we call eco-apartheid. Eco-apartheid is a society where you have ecological haves and ecological have-nots. Eco-apartheid won't work. If only 20% or 10% of the economy has gone green and the other 80% is still stuck in the last century's gray economy, it will undo all of the gains of the green economy. So from an ecological, economic standpoint, the entire economy has to go green. The people who can't afford the hybrids and can't afford all that stuff still have to be able to go to work every day in green industries. They've got to be able to get there using clean transportation. We have a long way to go before we get to the third outcome, which we call eco-equity. Eco-equity is a society in which the green economy is the economy. It's the main economy. It's the economy that the vast majority of people participate in. If we do not make it to eco-equity, eco-apartheid is just a speed bump on the way to eco-apocalypse. The majority of people have to be given the opportunity to take part, or we're all going to perish. The other day we were in Richmond, and Solar Richmond was putting up solar panels on a moderate income home. These are the heroes. These are the people who are doing the work that's going to save the world. And so often they're the young men who you see on the bus and you're afraid of them. They're seen as the villains. In order for what we saw with Solar Richmond to happen in every city across the country, we're asking for $1 billion commitment from the federal government to lift at least 250,000 people out of poverty and into green-collar jobs. We're calling that our Green for All initiative.
History to make it. This is the first step in the new environmental revolution right here.
We don't think it's about charity. We think that that's the smartest thing that we can do to have the workforce that we need to retrofit and reboot an entire country. We've got to train tens, hundreds of thousands of people in these new technologies. That's our hope, that's our opportunity. And so we're saying $1 billion from the federal government, train 250,000 people who are below the poverty line right now to do this work. They can lift their families out of poverty, they can save the polar bears. These are the heroes. These are the new environmental heroes. And we're gonna make it because people like that are gonna be given the tools and the technologies to fix this country, to put us back on some path towards sanity. And they're not the villains, they're the heroes. They're our heroes, our new heroes.
They trade bones over carbon points. Icarus wax, Iraqi and oil annoys. Bodies and joints behind bars. Life moves annoyance, but justice will never lose a voice. Equity is energy efficiency. Axe Van Jones, the XLB. Green jobs, green cities from community. Opportunities, not a poverty economy. Never lie to the youth, cause poof, you be going posthumously.
Green jobs now! Green jobs now!
And else to be here, breathing in your warfare. Earth that's commodity and lack of humanity. Never should humanity die of inequality. Sunshine, you are the sunshine. We are the sunshine. So let our sunshine, let our you shine. Let our you shine. You are the sunshine. 106 degrees, record-breaking temperature. 96 degrees under trees. Oh, you into the 66% of military expenditure. 6 textbooks, 30 kids. Can you figure the youth rise with a 9 to 5? Stay alive, put down the 9 and help the earth be colonized. Billions of dollars of renewable energy. One sky, one source of infinity. Clearly we live like King and Kennedy. Rooftop PV, solar panel ED. Meteorologists.